All right. Hey guys, thanks for logging on. Today's webinar is webinar number 5, and we're going to be kind of picking up where we left off in webinar number 4, which was really about the yin yang and the I Ching and the 4 stages of the customer's customer's journey, as explained through the yin and yang, which was an interesting one for me. But this one, we're going to go through looking specifically, if you remember, about the customer's decision-making process, if they're deciding that they do want to buy it. So we're going to be looking at that. It basically, it's a little bit in more detail from what we talked about in the last webinar. The last webinar was pretty kind of high-level concepts. This one, we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty about these phases. And so if you haven't seen webinar number 4, I'd recommend watching that one, although you don't need to watch it for this one, but it'll be fun. So in this one, we're going to be basically looking at these yes customers, maybe no, and maybe yes customers. We'll not really touch on the no customers at all, but these are the three that you really want to talk to anyway, because they're the only ones that are going to buy from you. So that's where you should really focus. Cool, so this will be about 20 minutes, but I believe it'll probably end up being less than 20 minutes. We're gonna go through the OODA loop. So the OODA loop is this decision-making framework, and I'll be walking through online shoppers' decision-making process using the OODA loop. So we'll go through that, and then the 4 steps of the OODA loop will go in specifically, and then basically what each one of these steps mean in the world and in the context of e-commerce and online sales. So the first step is observation, orientation, decision, action. So let's get started. So the OODA loop was developed by this guy, John Boyd. John Boyd was a US fighter pilot in the Korean War and then in the Vietnam War. I think it's the other way around. I think Vietnam War came first and then the Korean War came second. But he was a pilot in both of those wars. And he was also the one that's been credited mostly for bringing Sun Tzu's Art of War into the US Air Force and into the US military. So before the 1960s, nobody in the West was really familiar with Sun Tzu. He was an academic. He was a philosopher. He was a philosopher warrior. That's his archetype. And he brought over the art of war to the US military through all of his presentations to generals and things like that. And he developed this OODA loop. And so OODA loop is basically, like we talked about, it's observe, orient, decide, act. It's basically going through that decision-making process of these 4 steps. And then, once you act, then you go back to observe or orient or decide, and you kind of keep that loop going. So the OODA loop was obviously originally developed for the US military in terms of conflict decision-making environments, but it can also be used in sports for athletes that are playing against other teams. But in our case, we're going to be using it as business people, as marketers, and understanding that our customers are using decision-making processes for themselves. And so if we can see kind of what kind of decision-making process they might be using to get ahead of anything of a negative, to get ahead of, an action that, we don't want the customer to take, for example, abandoning the checkout. So let's break it down. There's 4 steps: observe, orient, decide, and act. Super simple. First step, you're basically looking and understanding kind of where you are. And okay, I know that I'm in this room with white walls and big ceilings. Okay, cool. Orient, kind of where am I in the room? What's around me? What could I use? What's a risk? What's a strength? Kind of figuring out what, orienting yourself. As well as orienting yourself with the goal. Whatever is the goal. What is the goal that I want to accomplish? Third step is then to decide on what action to take. Like decide on the objective, which is kind of like this goal, but also decide on what we're going to do. And then lastly, to action on the decision, actually take the action. But then the key thing is after taking the action, to look, because things will change and there's something new to observe, there's something new to reorient ourselves, and then there's going to be another decision to make. So these are the 4 steps. Again, we're going to be looking at these 4 steps that a customer might be going through on your website. So from the customer's perspective, really that first step, that first observation is them on your website, right? They're going to be looking at your About Us page. The About Us page, by the way, is probably the 2nd most visited page on your website. So it's very important that you do a good job with it. So they're checking out your About page, they're checking out your product pictures, they're reading your FAQs, they're trying to get a sense of your business's values and the principles that you kind of stand for, because they just want to know that they're in the right place, right? That you can do what you say you're going to do and that you can solve their problem. They're trying to figure that out. They're observing. After they're observing, they're really trying to figure out if they can trust you. If this really is a product that is going to solve their needs. They're going to be looking at the details. They might be looking at reviews. They'll be orienting and kind of comparing maybe your prices with other people's prices. They're basically now going to be in this decision-making process. They're going to be deep in the decision-making process. Whether they know it or not, they're subconsciously thinking about, okay, is this right for me or is this not right for me? And then after that, they're going to decide, right? Either they're not going to buy it, maybe this is right for me, or they can be like, yep, this is exactly what I need, click buy and buy now. So this is basically that stage where they're making that decision. So a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of e-commerce merchants on Shopify or BigCommerce or whatever they're selling on, they basically think they kind of boil down, and some don't even boil it down to this many, but they boil it down to just, okay, a customer's on my site and they're making a decision. But they ignore, observe and orient. You have to remember that observe and orient has to come before that decision. And you need to really, again, understand who your customer is and what problem you're solving so that you can help the customer get to the right orientation, right? You want to help the customer it's like Inception. You want them to come up with the answer that, yep, this is exactly what I need. But again, for you to to seed that idea in their consciousness, you have to know what is it that they're trying to achieve. If you know what they're trying to achieve, you can help them orient themselves, that orient yourself in their kind of view that you are the right business to solve that problem or the right product to solve that problem or need. So again, when they're on the decide phase, they're thinking, don't buy it, maybe later, maybe, I don't know, or buy now. Now, here's the key thing. Now, after they decided, they're obviously going to take an action, right? So let's say that they do want to buy now. Let's see, they clicked the buy now. They are in the buy now category. These are either your yes customers or maybe yes customers, or maybe no customers. Maybe they're somewhere there, but they're largely your yes customers, as we talked about in the webinar number 4. And so they're going to click add to cart. Now, when they click add to cart, that's their action. When they click add to cart, a new page is going to pop up, right? A new page is going to say, okay, now it's time. Here's your cart. Click checkout. Now we're going to enter your personal details. And now the customer has to reorient. Okay, where am I? Okay, cool. Observe. Okay, I'm on the checkout page. I'm on my personal details page. And then they have to reorient. Okay, what do I have to fill in? Why do I have to fill this in? Okay, makes sense. And then again, they're going to decide whether they want to keep going. So hopefully these are not really big decisions to make. These are just really small decisions like, okay, cool, yeah, what address do I want to send it to? Okay, what shipping method do I want? These are other decisions that they have to make. So really the thing to remember here is not just one, customers not going through this cycle once. They're going through it, at least 2 or 3 times because, they have to type in the shipping information and they click next, and then another page pops up and then they have to type in the credit card information, click next, and then the confirmation of the payment is there. So they have to take at least 3 decisions to get to making and confirming their purchase. So, right, just because, so a buy now customer, for example, might do that. They're like, yep, I know it. I know I need to do that, done. But a maybe customer, right, like a maybe yes or a maybe no customer, they're on those pages and then kind of, you got through that first decide, they clicked it. They were maybe, but they clicked it. They decided to go for the yes, But now that maybe has come back, and now they have to make another yes or no decision, right? And that's why the abandoned checkouts happens, because people that are the maybes, decided to buy, but then since you've given them another decision to take, now it's another opportunity for them to think not yes, but maybe a no, right? And then that's how you get an abandoned checkout. Now, most people are probably using, auto emails. That's fine. Use those auto emails. But again, as you know, this is Scout. You know what I'm going to say. You should probably be calling these customers. If they are a maybe customer, you want to understand why they're a maybe customer. What about it made it a maybe? If you don't know what made it a maybe, then you're not going to stop the next customer from also being a maybe, right? Maybe they were maybe because, in my case, I've used this example before. I do sell handheld bidets, but for me, I was seeing that a lot of people wanted a hot water product. So they were maybe because they thought, maybe the water's going to be too cold on my butt, so I don't want it. So that was the maybe. But I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't talking to people and then figuring out, okay, that's why they're the maybe, and then fixing it by making it clear that I have a hot water product, which worked really well, and my abandoned cart rates dropped a lot. But again, if I wasn't talking to customers, I wouldn't have known that. And for each business, it's going to be something new. You don't know what it is. You might think you know why they're maybes, but until you actually talk to a handful, you're not going to know. So sorry to go on that Scout rant, but this is basically, what we want to do, because by talking to the customer that is in the middle of their OODA loop, you can help, persuade them. You can guide them through the OODA loop because you're on the phone with them, or you're texting with them, or you're emailing with them. You can help guide them, but you have to remember, you have to reach out. Otherwise, you're just throwing away that sale. Now, we talked about, the yes and no, right? If someone's going to decide, no, I don't want it, then they're just going to close. And that's just someone that you're going to have a very, very, very hard time selling to. It's almost impossible to sell to someone who's like, I don't need this, right? It's really, really hard and very, very rare. We talked about the let's buy, right? They click through it. But see, again, the maybe is interesting because, those two are easy. Let's buy, okay, they're going to click add to cart. Don't buy, okay, they're going to close. But what about the maybes, right? We were just talking about the maybes where maybe some of them do click buy, but if you don't give a maybe a clear action to take, they're going to be don't buys, right? The clear action for a let's buy customer, right? Like they're in the decision making, right? They've decided, yes, let's buy. The action is easy for them to see. The action is click add to cart, right? If somebody decides that they want to buy, it's clear that that add to cart is the option to take. That's the action, right? You've laid it out in front of them. They don't even have to think too hard. They already know the action's already there, right? If there's a don't buy, what action would they take? Close the window. Again, that action is clear. They can just go and click the X in the browser and be done with it. So that action is also very clear. So each decision has a clear action, and that's on your website. See, and then coming to the maybe. Now the maybe is, again, where it gets tricky, because there's no maybe button on a website, right? There's the buy button and there's a close button, but there's no maybe button, but you know that you have maybe customers. So what are you doing about these customers? Because if you don't do anything about them, that maybe is likely going to turn into that close, or at the very least, at the very most, turn into an abandoned checkout or an abandoned cart, right? That's what's going to happen with the maybe if you don't give them an explicit maybe action to take. I'm calling it a maybe action. Obviously, don't make a button on your website that says maybe. Maybe you do. Maybe try it. Who knows? But give them some other button to click that's not an add to cart, right? And again, I'm going to plug Raven, one of our other apps, but that's the app basically that I developed for my own store, because I knew that I had a lot of yes customers, but I also had a lot of maybe no customers. And every store has a maybe customer. So what I did was, instead of just having that add to cart button, I added a button underneath the add to cart button that says request a callback, or talk to the store owner, or request more information, something like that, where if somebody is a maybe, they have a clear very clear, big button they can click that is made for the maybes, right? They weren't yes and they weren't no, they were a maybe. So give them the maybe action. That's what Raven is all about. It's when someone is in that maybe state of mind, you want to talk to them. Why would you not want to talk to them? They're on your website. It's maybe yes, it's maybe no, but either way, it's maybe. You need to talk to these customers because they're holding, their wallet. They're about to buy. That's when you want to talk to these customers. Especially you want to call them back right away when they're still on your site and they're still fresh in that OODA loop, right? When you talk to them and you have that one-on-one, two-way dialogue, you can help guide them on their OODA loop better. You can understand how they're orienting themselves. When you start talking to a customer and asking for feedback, you're basically understanding where they are in terms of their orientation, right? And when you understand where they are in terms of their orientation, you can give them the information to help them get to a buy now decision or a buy decision, or maybe a buy later, at the very least a buy later decision, but you want to help them get to that positive decision. You can't do that if you don't know what they're thinking, right? That's what calling your customers does, even if they're abandoned cart through your scout alerts or whether it's a Raven callback alert. What really these two apps are doing is helping you get into the mind of your customer by where they are in their orientation phase. Hope that makes sense. It's a super important concept to understand. You're basically giving a maybe customer a clear maybe action to take, right? There's other buttons that you have on your site, like, the live chat button or the email us, contact us button, or if a phone number where they can reach you. But these are all very kind of long processes, long decisions to take, even because when they click when you do a start chat, this decision isn't just to start the chat. The decision now is to write down, what is my question? Maybe I don't know why I don't want it. I don't know how to put it into words. So I won't actually write anything because I don't know. Same thing with the email. It could take 48 hours for the merchant to reply to my email contact form page. So I'm just not going to bother. And then with a phone call, I have to pull out my phone, I have to call the number. If nobody picks up, and I have to decide if I have to call them back. Or be on hold, and I have to decide, is it worth it for me to stay on hold this long? So again, all these other options that I thought were available to me, like the live chat, the contact form, and the phone number listed, I just felt like was creating more decisions for the customer to take. This one's just really easy. They click the button because they're maybe, just ask them to put in their phone number, and then when they put it in, you as a merchant get the alert, hey, this person wants you to call them back, they're a maybe customer, here's their number. Right? So that's what Raven does. So this is I hope this is really clear. That this is the last slide, but really the idea is that your customers are going to be going through these 4 phases, right? Your customers are going through these 4 phases unconsciously, so in their subconscious, when they're making this purchasing decision. You need to understand where most of these customers are, how they observe your site, how they orient their site, where they're spending most time on your page, right? Because that's going to determine how they're orienting themselves about your brand and your products and your services, right? You want to talk to these customers so you can understand more clearly, yes, this is how they've oriented themselves, so you can help them get to that buy or buy later decision at least, right? When they're deciding, they're going to make 3 decisions, right? There's maybe 4 decisions if you're looking at our previous webinar where it's a yes, maybe no, no, maybe yes, but we're just going to categorize those maybe no's and maybe yeses as maybes, right? So you either have a yes or a maybe or a no, right? If it's a yes, it's easy. They'll buy. You probably don't have too much friction to worry about. If it's a no, they're not worth talking to anyway. They weren't ever going to buy. They're just going to waste your time. But the maybes are where you need to focus, right? The maybes are the ones who are going to abandon their checkouts. The maybes are the ones that are not even going to click add to cart. They're going to be interested, but they're going to peace out. This is the other really one more thing I'm just going to say. It's really, really important, is that just because your Shopify dashboard or your BigCommerce dashboard, just because it says, hey, you've had 600 abandoned checkouts this month, let's just say that number is 600, that doesn't mean that those are all the abandoned checkouts you had, right? That doesn't count the people who didn't click the button, but they abandoned in their head and didn't actually take the action. right? There's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people that are maybes on your site that are just going to click X, right? Like I mentioned, they're just going to click X. And when they click X, you don't know who they were. You don't know if they were interested, right? Because you didn't give them any other action to take. That's why we made Raven, because Raven can help collect these people that are not yeses, that won't click the add to cart, but they might click talk to a person. And so those are also abandoned checkouts, right? Think about it. Just because somebody didn't click a button doesn't mean they are not categorized as an abandoned cart. They may have just abandoned cart without actually lifting their hand. They might have just thought about it. They might have moved their eyes to the add to cart and kind of clicked it in their head and then decided, nah. And then why click it if you know that you're not gonna, why click it if you know that you're probably gonna abandon anyway? But if you gave another button, like talk to the developer, or talk to the creator, or talk to the craftsman, or talk to the founder, something like that, where now it's like, okay, well, you know what, maybe I don't want to buy, but maybe let me talk to the guy, right? So give them another action to take, right? So I hope this clears it up. This was a fun one. The OODA loop was really interesting. Super, super interesting. I'd highly recommend looking into John Boyd and the OODA loop. There's a lot of content out there. I'll make these slides available somewhere, so just look for them, probably on our Scout resources page. I'll link all the slides there for all the webinars. But yeah, that's it for this one. The next one that's coming up is going to be about just saying thank you. I think this is something that not enough merchants do. I don't know why. I don't think there's enough information out there. There's all this information about sending email drip campaigns and how to retain customers and how to do all these complex automated things, you know, using like AI and automation and kind of all these super extra complicated things. I just thought, hey, let's just go back to basics. Let's just go back to saying thank you. What are 5 benefits of saying simply thank you? So that's the next webinar. Look out for that probably in the next couple of days. Thanks, guys.